Behind the Shades.
So, like, you're already so zenned out that these things just don't bother you.
Oh
And
yeah, when you
yeah.
raised an amazing point when you said like the eye candy, right? I don't think I've ever been to a workout session where the person was like, "Yeah, they're not kind of attractive. They're usually like very attractive, very hot. They get you in the mood, right? Like that's the I remember walking by the Zumba classes or the spin classes, and you're trying not to look, you kind of like look at the corner of your eye and things like that. But these are all things that play up to you getting into the mood,
Yeah.
especially when you mention your body, your mind, everything's so malleable in the morning because you've just woken up.
Hmm.
So when you are sharing this, Jenny, is this something that you had to learn yourself, or is it something that you always knew?
It's definitely something that I had to learn myself because, well, I guess I could give you my background. I grew up in the most conservative and also oppressive environments. Okay, I grew up in Indonesia, and it's mostly a conservative Muslim community. And I also came from this conservative Chinese family, and I also went to Catholic schools and Catholic church. So there's like a lot of oppression going on there that was causing me to be unable to express myself as a human, because whatever I expressed, whatever that is that I felt was true to myself, whatever I felt um, honest with myself, I was always beaten up and shoved back to this box of conformity. So years and years of that, I came into this life of that is so far from authentic, because I was living a life that was prescribed rather than true to myself, right? And it came to it brought me to this path of destruction, really, depression, unhappiness, and separation from myself. And at one point, I just kind of questioned, what's the point of living like this? And I had all this, suicidal thoughts, right? Like running away and like, from the life. And at that point, I had a life that was considered beautiful for other people, a beautiful house on this 4-acre land, a husband, and a beautiful baby, right? And people would like, think that, like, are you crazy? Like, what else do you want? Right? But but you just couldn't help yourself when you're not aligned with your soul, right? And I was so used to just doing whatever people thought that was right for me to do, because this is what is supposedly the American dream, or like whatever that was, right? But it wasn't aligned with my soul, and so that caused me to be really unhappy and depressed. And at some point, it well, and there's also like this unconscious story that's running of like how women should be, right? Like a woman's body is supposed to be a vehicle of pleasure for men, right? And you should, like, if you're breaking your body to take care of your family, you're such a noble woman. And that was the story that was running underneath me. And at some point, I was so depleted, I was so exhausted, and my relationships with everybody around me crumbled, and I was depressed, and like that's it. And I got a divorce. And that was the time when I finally got out the house and got to spend time with myself, stepped out of the culture that I grew up in, stepped out of the marriage. And that's when I figured out I haven't been taking care of myself. And that was the key, right? And so that's when I started to feel, and also I hated my job. I hated everything in my life. Nothing made me happy. So if you actually think of like, oh, okay, maybe you were just not in the right environment, but you know what? Something that I learned your environment is what it is. But if you have like a good inner environment, everything could work. And so that's what I learned. Because when I felt like, okay, I cannot live like this anymore, right? And I started to just like, okay, what can I do to make me maybe just like a little happier, just so I could cope with my job. And so at that time, even still now, I'm a teacher for an inner city school where the kids come from maybe environments that are challenging, abusive families, drug problems, gang violence, and things like that. So they would come to school with like all their problems and heavy, they were needing love that I could not give because I was so exhausted, right? And at that point, I really hated the mornings. I hated my job. I hated everybody, pretty much, right? But I decided to just, okay, what if I wake up 10 minutes earlier and do something that makes me happy? And I just needed to do that, just to give myself a little treat. And so that's what I did. 10 minutes earlier, I put on some music and I just moved my body to some good music, and it felt so good, right? It was so much fun. And I was doing that for a couple of weeks, and I thought, you know what? I'm having so much fun. I'm going to add 5 more minutes so I can have 5 more minutes of fun, right? And in the process of doing that, I noticed that my mood was lifted, and I would come to school where I was working like a little happier, right? And my interaction with the kids, like, although it was not as bad as before, I took things so much lighter. And what used to be a big deal, what used to be like a big stressor, just wasn't a big deal anymore.